Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the GEB America podcast. We want to say a special hello to all the people that are recently listening on Pray.com, watching on Pray.com. We are so glad to have you with us today. We have a very special guest all the way from the West Coast in California. I would say, is it okay to say legend, but not antique, right?
I don't know what that means anymore. I got a legendary award once, like a lifetime achievement, and I think that means your career's over.
That means that the end is near.
Yeah.
Bryan Duncan joins us. Of course, many of you are going to know him over the years for all the 18 solo records. Former lead singer of the long touring band Sweet Comfort Band from the 70s into the 80s, and then you've had a number of hits that people remember from CCM Radio. And I really just wanted to sit down and kind of hear about your story, how you ended up in the industry, how all that came together with Sweet Comfort, and then the solo career, and then what you're up to now. So take us back, if you would, those early days.
Well,
when did you realize you could sing and had an interest?
Okay, let's see if I can get this in a nutshell. Grew up Pentecostal. My dad is an Assemblies of God preacher, so naturally I had to play music at church because they're small church. So I was the volunteer help, and I won a talent contest where I was the only one in the male vocalist category, and that started me thinking, well, maybe I should sing for This is the first time I'd ever sung for anybody, and it went pretty well, I guess. Then I went to college and at a Bible college, and they told me I wasn't missionary material, and so I went home, and then I came out to California. I was writing songs and playing my own stuff because I couldn't play anybody else's, and I ran straight into the Jesus movement out in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I was schlepping equipment for Love Song for a while at the tent during the Jesus Revolution. If you watch that movie, a lot of that's kind of not very accurate, but we were there, and I met my drummer and bass player for the Sweet Comfort Band at the tent in the very earliest days. Children of the Day and Love Song was around, and we started our own band. It was called Sweet Comfort, and every time we'd call somebody, they thought we were a mattress company, and I thought we were saying sleep comfort, and so we changed it to the Sweet Comfort Band, just to make things clear. That went on. We were a three-piece for a year and a half, and then we ran into a guitar player that was smoking. I mean, he was really good. Not literally smoking, but...
and that was, of course, Randy Thomas.
Randy Thomas. And our first record was, after he joined the band. So obviously we weren't a whole band till we had a guitar player. And we started Maranatha 5, and we did one record for Maranatha Music, and then things kind of took off from there. Yeah. Pretty soon we were road dogs for about 10 years. And then I quit, because I was making $200 a week. It's like people think, music business, nationally known band. We were starving. So I quit and went to work for about 6 months, and then somebody offered me a contract to do a solo thing. So I just wanted you to know that I didn't go solo because I thought it was, the hot stuff. Because a lot of times, singers go off on their own. They decide, I want to be me. I want to be me. So, But no, I was still writing songs, and, and then I did that contract, and wow, 20 years later, I've got 17 albums out or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the story goes. If you want the details about songs and stuff, you can go to Nutshell Sermons, because I started doing it when the Jesus Revolution came out, and they didn't mention anybody that was there in the beginning, except Love Song maybe, and there was like 30-something bands playing at that church. And that was...
Oh, they just rotated? Were they like rotating through his church, Chuck Smith's church?
Well, Chuck Smith was where Maranatha Music came from, and then Greg Laurie started an offshoot of Calvary Chapel, and it was in Riverside. But they only mentioned Love Song, and they didn't even portray them as a unbelievably good band. They made it sound like they were a bunch of hippie singers. They they
Hmm.
they were as good as anybody that you'd heard, the Eagles or the Beach Boys. I mean, their vocals were stunning.
Hmm.
But then Chuck Girard from Love Song did a lot of studio work with Brian Wilson in the early days.
Right.
So I mean, they didn't say anything about that stuff, and they didn't mention the Sweet Comfort Band that we were there from the beginning of the Calvary Chapel Riverside, and we probably played every high school and college and prison within 100 miles of that church. And then
Wow.
there was probably 30 other Christian bands at the time. It was kind of a big deal, and no offense, but the preaching is a great thing, but it was the music that was bringing people in.
Yeah. Yeah. What were some of the other bands back then that people from that era might recognize that were there besides Love Song and Sweet Comfort?
Well, we were kind of second generation. There was Love Song, Children of the Day, um, Winging a Prayer was a spin off of that group. Country Faith. Then there was Gentle Faith that came along later, about the same time Sweet Comfort Band came out. And then there was a group called Daniel Amos. And
Oh
then there
yeah.
was Blessed Hope, um Parable, The Way. Uh, you know, just the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of bands coming through there, and even at Calvary Riverside, Andre Crouch came out and played a couple times, and so did Keith Green. Keith Green used to open for the Sweet Comfort Band,
Wow.
down at the beach. I remember playing with
Mm-hmm.
him at some kind of gazebo in Newport Beach.
Wow.
Um, so I mean, we watched a lot of people come and go.
Yeah. What would you say that when you guys first started, obviously the Jesus people, you said you kind of splashed right into that. What were the influences that you and the Thompson brothers and Randy, what were those that kind of lent themselves to what you guys did with Sweet Comfort?
No, we just made up our own stuff. In fact, Maranatha didn't even like Sweet Comfort Band. It was like everybody was doing kind of a country vocalized. It was Chuck Smith liked love song style. That 4-part harmony,
Mm-hmm.
and so we came on. We were doing like twin leads. And I was doing a lot of screaming, and the guitar was really screaming, and we were doing jazz, funk, soul, rock, which was really kind of not the acceptable, not the anointed music. As much as they talk about how that was like cutting edge music, they would stop at horn sections, and jazz and funk, soul music was that was still kind of anathema to Maranatha.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why we only did one record with them, and we moved on to Light Records. Light Records
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of black gospel artists, and Andre was there for a while,
Yeah, I was
and
gonna say Andre was, yeah.
although the guy that ran Light Records was Ralph Carmichael. He was supposed to be real cutting edge in his day because he was doing orchestrated stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He looked like Geppetto on Pinocchio. These big mutton chops and horn rim glasses. But at least he was open to new styles, and
Mm-hmm.
and we never looked back after that. We were taking a lot of cues from. There was a group out that was a Christian band, but they were on a secular label, and they were called Seawind, and they had a full horn section. Man, they were good. They were so good, and we wanted to be them, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we got Bob Wilson to produce our next, the Breaking the Ice project, because we wanted their horn section too. Their
Oh
horn
yeah.
players eventually went on to play with Quincy Jones projects and just about everything on the secular side.
What were so when you went you went solo 84 ish, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. The last Sweet Comfort Band thing was the summer of 1984, and it seemed like I just jumped right into a solo career, but there was a good 6 or 7 months before where I was pouring concrete,
Yeah.
working with mostly digging the ditches for the footings, which is
Hmm.
kind of like a sermon in itself. God's going, I want to teach you about foundations,
So go dig some ditches here. Yeah.
So I didn't really see the solo thing coming, but I played a concert. One guy down the street from us had a church youth group, and he says, we could pay you $300 to come down and just sing for the youth group. $300. That's more than I'm making a week with the band. So I went down there, and I thought, well, if I could do this, a couple of dates a month or something, I could probably make my house payment, and which was $245. That was big money back then for a house. But I wasn't. I was barely making that.
Yeah.
Um, so I called my friend Randy Stonehill had a manager named Ray Ware, and Stonehill and Larry Norman were friends, and there's a whole crew out of Hollywood
Yeah.
that hung around there, and I just called Ray up and said, "You think you could, get me a couple of, gigs just singing some songs?" Because I'm thinking, wow, if I could make $600 in a month, that'd be. And he said, "Are you kidding me?" He says, "I could get you a record contract in 2 weeks, and
Oh, wow.
and I'll be doggone if he didn't do that."
Hmm.
And the next thing you know, I'm doing another a record by myself. Scared the
Wow.
crap out of me, but I I remember calling it. I was thinking I was ready for the insane asylum. I got out of the band. I just wanted out of a band. I was tired of referring to myself as we. It's like, well, we're doing this, and we didn't
Hmm.
like. I'm going. When did I stop being a person?
Yeah.
So the first solo record was called "Have Yourself Committed." I thought it was pretty funny, and
Right.
but I think we sold more T-shirts than we sold records because the "Have Yourself Committed" T-shirt became every youth group's campaign for the summer.
Well, and what's funny is I didn't. I when I went back and looked at your discography, I didn't remember that record. The record I first remember you from was from Holy Rollin'.
That was a second project.
Right.
You know, I,
I think it was
I,
because you had some interesting covers.
what's
And
funny is that
hairstyles and all that. And that's kind of when I was younger, I remember going, oh, and of course, that's kind of what sticks in your head.
well, you know what, the Holy Rollin'. I had some weird outfits back then too. We were wearing bolo ties back then,
Hmm.
and looking like shiny smoking jackets. It was. I'm glad we didn't put that on the cover because I mean, whatever you think is hip this week is going to make your kids laugh at you when you're older. They're going, "Ha! You thought you were cool."
Right.
So I'm glad that was a shadow thing, and I remember spending probably 9 hours, at that photo shoot because apparently I'm not that photogenic. They took them a long time to get a picture that would work, but that picture on the album cover was the last picture that we took
Oh, wow.
because by then I got tired of posing, and so I
Yeah,
just started wigging out with the microphone stand,
that's right.
and they liked that better than all of the stuff of me going, you know.
Yeah, I remember the microphone. And now, from a radio success and for those that are maybe younger, you Gen Z and millennials, this era of what was called CCM radio, contemporary Christian music radio, that kind of predated all this big worship push.
Yeah.
Radio stations back then, that's what they did, was played CCM artists. And was Strong Medicine your first that really had a lot of radio play singles from it?
No, I can't remember when Strong Medicine was out, but I went with a label. I left Light Records and I went with a new company because I liked the A&R guy at Light, and he left to start his own company, and that didn't even last a year and a half. I think we were doing Strong Medicine on almost no budget. If you look at that album cover, it's black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we we raised enough money to, put red on the cover, but that was it. It was like there was no money in that thing, and then they went out of business before the record was out. So it did have a number one song or number two song, two of them. Stand in My Place and Strong Medicine,
Hmm.
took off by themselves, and we
Hmm.
didn't even have marketing money to beg people to play our stuff like they do now.
Yeah, and then you're on Myrrh at that point, and you had the Anonymous Confessions of a Lunatic Friend album that came out in. I remember that one. It was about what 1990.
Yeah, that was several albums down the road. By then, I'd done Whistling in the Dark, which
Hmm.
was I was starting to realize that I was doing a little too much cut and paste with the gospel. You can kind of encapsulate the gospel message and then run around and just throw that around and be acceptable. But at the end of the day, I wanted real faith, and I wanted Jesus to be in my life on a daily basis, and
Hmm.
through the routine. And it wasn't, after you've known Jesus for a while, you get a little past the what I call Christianity 101. And that's when Whistle in the Dark came out. I spent my
Hmm.
time between the answers. He started to discover that there was a lot of stuff he wasn't explaining to me, and nor did he ever do. I'm going, he still hasn't said anything about that, and he just lets me walk by faith. And
That's right.
sometimes I don't even think that's fun. He's definitely not interested in my comfort level. So
Mm.
Whistling in the Dark came out, and Strong Medicine was starting to think like that. What's
Hmm.
what's the problems?
Right.
What am I supposed to do with this? Because as a man, we want to fix everything, and we want to know the answer. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes before we have the questions.
Hmm.
Um, so by the time I got to the Anonymous Confessions of a Lunatic Friend, it was just the idea of in church you couldn't tell anybody you had a problem. It's like, well, I have a friend and he has a problem,
Hmm.
and I just thought that was hysterical that that even in church we pretended to be fine all the time.
Hmm.
And I grew up in a church like that, where the focus was on the guy under the bridge. We can reach out to the lost that way because we don't know him and we don't see his continual bad choices. It's
Hmm.
like when you live with your family, suddenly it's a little harder to love them because they continue to do the same things that they've always done and are expecting a different result. And I started to realize, I want to know the Jesus that said I could confess my faults to him that I might be healed. And
Hmm.
for that to happen, man, you got to start asking questions, or looking at yourself. And I mean, not myopically, but you got to start looking, why do I not do the right things? And why am I hanging on this? It's like we're always looking for something that makes us feel better, and not all of it
Hmm.
is God's plan for your life.
Yeah. Did so from as those albums as you kind of progressed and the height of the CCM era, kind of there in the '90s, you had the other release that came shortly after that that really seemed to have a lot more radio airplay from the stand, which was Mercy.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and
Well,
so, talk a little bit about those songs that you wrote. I'm curious about your thought process on kind of where did the inspiration for a lot of those songs that went on to become the very well known Bryan Duncan singles that we heard all over radio.
now Mercy had 5 number one singles on it, and I don't remember
Yeah.
which ones they are now, except for Love Takes Time. I was really still in a point of where I was kind of recovering from my own confessions.
Mm.
In my own personal life, I'm going, wow, you start to really understand why Jesus had to die for you because you're just never going to get it right doing it yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and I felt like I'd been lied to a little bit, in
Hmm.
especially in church circles, that it was going to be that God wanted you to have off the map happiness, and that's not his primary concern. Your happiness and he said he'd give you joy, but happiness and your comfort level, that's really not part of his plan all that much, from what I've
Mm-hmm.
been experiencing. And so that's why Love Takes Time was like, have you ever been lied to, thought to be someone you can't be?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the love you need? And I'm going, this doesn't seem to resonate with the Jesus that I've come to know. So, and all the songs on that record were, I'm starting over for the rest of my life. It was done with Michael Omartian. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Toward the man I long to be. I just realized that I was unfinished, and
Yeah.
I wanted to call the record "Have Mercy," like "Have Mercy," but mercy was just a little more reverent and solemn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I'm going. It's dumbfounding when you realize that you are not going to live up to a creed that's going to
Yeah.
save your soul.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the five hits. Um, I know one of the hits was uh, which one? Oh, Step by Step. But the song, my favorite song on the whole record was "I'll Not Forget You." I really liked the way you kind of, I don't know. It was a little bit of a, I don't know, maybe a lamentation sounding song, but I think for sure it was just unique from what anybody else was doing um,
I don't
at the
know.
time.
I'll not forget you was about unfulfilled promises. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to. I grew up in a evangelical, Pentecostal fervor, and we were always talking about instantaneous transformations,
Mm.
and nobody was waiting for the promise. You know what I mean? you know, I still go back to the very first scripture about Moses. God tells him he's going to deliver the people with him, and so he thinks that's going to happen tomorrow. and by the time that God comes to him and says, "Okay, I'm ready for you to do this," he's on the backside of a desert for 40 years, and he's going, "What do you want with me?" He had kind of given up his own ambitions about being the father of a nation that then lead him out of captivity. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that seems to be more the case with Sarah and uh, in the story there. You know, they tried to make things happen on their own, and it just made a bigger mess. And I still
Yeah.
see that all the time. Every time I
Mm-hmm.
try to I'm going to make this happen for Jesus, and and
Right.
it just turns into a quagmire. It's hard to know when God's going to step in, but man, he's got a different time clock than I do, and that's the whole point of "I'll not forget you." Sarah's waiting in a crown of silver hair,
Mm-hmm.
um, and Abraham is marking time as years go by. So sure, his dream has passed him by. So I'm starting to understand that um, God wants me to know Him.
Yeah.
That's more important than me trying to accomplish something for Him.
Right.
He doesn't need my help.
No, he
Like,
doesn't need us to do him any favors.
no, and it's just astonishing because I want to fix stuff. I want to get out there and slap people around in the name of Christ, and it's just never worked.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you try to push something, you know, there's just a lot of downtime that I never quite figured out what to do with. If
Mm-hmm.
you're a man, you just want to be doing something all the time. I don't
Right.
mind having a vision, but for the love of God, let me paint something.
Well, anytime I've ever talked to you, you always seem like you're up to something. You're on the go. You got something going. You
Well,
know.
I'm attention deficit. I have a hard time staying focused unless I'm focused on something.
Yeah.
The thing about ADD is you do have an ability to hyper focus on one thing and
Mm-hmm.
actually get it done. But I have a manager and a wife both that say that I'm kind of a bulldozer. I mean, it's like I just want to go, just go, let's just go
Yeah.
do it, and
Well,
that's my life at this point.
yeah. So tell us about like okay today. I know you do where you'll go into churches. Churches can bring you in. Like, tell us a little bit about what you're up to, kind of now. Like we talked a few weeks ago about, you've released all these solo projects, and you made the comment, I don't know that the world needs another solo project from me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, so what is your,
Well,
what gives you passion now and keeps you busy?
when the COVID pandemic hit, suddenly you couldn't do concerts for about 3 years. You couldn't
Hmm.
assemble a group of people and play for them. And I didn't like doing all the technology, to sing into a camera. It just felt, there's no synergy in it. I just hated it. And then I realized that after 3 years that I'd been promising a new record and just always talking about something you're going to do, and eventually people just get tired of it. They're going, "You haven't done anything." So I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to promise a record anymore. Um, Wait, I'll talk to you later, okay, sweetie? Bye. Have a nice day at school. I Okay, yeah, but I've got to. No, go. No, okay, yeah, but I'm doing an interview right now, sweetie. Go over there and talk to Mimi. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's
I'm
part of the.
babysitting grandkids these
It's the
days.
You're a grandfather.
Oh
That's
man, yeah, that's just one of them. There's like five. Obviously, Mimi is not watching her. All right, I forgot where I was now.
well, no, you were
Can you
talking
cut that
about.
out? Probably not.
No, you were talking about. You were promising records, and people get tired and say you
Oh,
haven't
I
done
just
anything.
decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I came to a point where I realized, would I give up the one thing that I'm good at if God asked me to? Have you ever been to a place like that where you're going, yeah, but I'm good at this?
Hmm.
And God says, no, I want you to do something completely different. And it took me a good 3 years to be willing to say, well, if you don't want me to sing, if you don't want me to write songs anymore, then, I guess I could, I could do that. But and when I finally did that, I heard somebody talking about podcasts on the news about how people were doing podcasts, and it was kind of a way
Yep.
to reach out and a way to bring in some money at the same time, because by 3 years I needed a second job, you know.
Hmm.
But I didn't want to do a whole hour show. Lord have mercy, I don't have that much content. So I decided I'm going to try something. Because on Twitter, I always post these things. I follow Jesus because hashtag. Hashtag dear God, I don't
Hmm.
like some of your friends. It's like prayers you won't hear in church. Um, Pretty productive day. And there was one that I used to do. It's called a hashtag nutshell sermon. And I'd read something from Oswald Chambers in my devotions, and he was saying there's a difference between excusing and forgiving. It says you can
Hmm.
forgive somebody, but that doesn't mean you excuse them. I'm going, wow, that's a nutshell sermon. You don't need
Hmm.
any more than that. That's like 10 seconds long. So I started doing that. Nutshellsermons.com. They're 2 minute long sermons now. They're little, diatribes, and they kind of come off sarcastic and humorous, but that's been going for 2 years now, and I like it. I like it as much as I ever did. And I don't have to get on an airplane to do it.
So the podcast, people can find the Nutshell Sermons on all the usual platforms.
Yeah, they're on everything. It's got 5-star rating on Apple Podcast, and it was ranked number 5 out of 100 Christian podcasts on this new thing. It's called Good Pods, I think,
Hmm.
but it's doing pretty well. And because I'm not trying to be a preacher. I'm just saying that I'm your lunatic friend from the back row. Because there's always sometimes the best conversations are after the sermon is over, and you're going, yeah, but well, you know what? This is what I think,
Hmm.
and because there's a working out of your salvation. The Bible even talks about it, and so you don't just go hear the sermon and try to repeat everything he did. You
Hmm.
you throw your questions out there or your frustrations with what doesn't seem to work, like the whole waiting on Jesus thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I do they're 2 minutes long. It's like nutshell sermons, and I'm not trying to be an authority on anything.
No.
But then I do songs that didn't make the last record. So there's like 30 songs on there that have never been that I didn't record officially because there was no budget, there was no record company, and there was no distribution. So
Yeah.
and then I do prayers you won't hear in church, which are funny, hysterical. Dear God, I need you to kill someone. It's like, or dear God, are we on speakerphone? Those are the kind of things. They're kind of light, uh, humorous, but at the same time poignant.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course I've been telling the stories of Jesus and music because we were left out of the movies. Uh, the Jesus Revolution didn't mention anybody from the West Coast except for Love Song, and I'm going, wow, you missed half the revolution right there.
Yeah, there, like you said earlier, there's so many bands that kind of laid the groundwork.
Yeah,
During that era. I mean, even into the '80s, when I really kind of started paying attention to music in general. So many of those, the Randy Stonehills, yourself, Sweet Comfort Band, Larry Norman, and then that kind of led its way into kind of those early bands that I loved to listen to in those in the '80s and '90s, which was the White Hearts and the early Petra and just stuff like
DeGarmo
that.
and Key. Remember
DeGarmo
DeGarmo?
and Key, yes. But, funny story. My dad was, alcoholic when I was little. He got tremendously delivered and saved, and of course, being that he came from that world into the church, he, everything was, oh no, you can't listen to that, you can't listen to that. And a cousin of ours from Florida introduced him to DeGarmo and Key. I think it was the Streetwise album in the early
Yeah.
'80s, and from then on, he was like, "There's some great stuff. The messages in these songs are really good." And then that kind of led me down a path of really just eating up anything that would come out. I was at the Christian bookstore looking at the that crazy guy with the microphone on the front of that album and things like that.
DeGarmo and Key, we used to play gigs with them. They'd come out on the West Coast sometimes, and it was almost a competition to see who could play the loudest. We Sweet Comfort Band, we used to blow up PA systems almost every week. It was like crank that up, and if you couldn't hear it across town, then we weren't doing our job.
So let me ask you: at the time we got left, so what are some of the things that as an artist that you like to listen to, or like what is it that even today you're like, oh, that's interesting. I enjoy that.
Yeah, I don't listen to a whole lot of stuff. Everything seems kind of disparaging these days. I still listen to a lot of my favorite oldies.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to admit that, but that's just the way it is. I don't, as far as music goes. I mean, but I read Oswald Chambers and Charles Swindoll for devotionals most of the time, and I look for insights from people. I've got a lot of friends on Twitter. I have two accounts there, and I'm always I find the best things, and God speaks to me in ways that you wouldn't think. Just in personal conversations with somebody, where somebody
Mm-hmm.
will say something, and I'm going, if that wasn't God speaking to me, I don't know what was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that happens to me all the time. It was like my wife saying to me one time that I never forgot, and it was like she said, "Well, if you're going to live by faith, you're going to have to do without some understanding." And I'm going, "Wait, what?" Um, that was like God tapping me on the shoulder, speaking through somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
and that still happens to me all the time. I just sometimes I remember people by my favorite thing they ever said. Like
Yeah.
my manager saying, "I don't mind you telling me you're sick, but you don't have to throw up on my coffee table to prove it."
I had a friend years ago after kind of one of those situations where my wife said something and I'm like, that was God. I told him it, and he said, You probably didn't think that the Holy Spirit had blonde hair, did you? I was like, you're right. He was totally speaking through her, you know?
So that happens to somebody else too. I thought it was just me. I thought God couldn't get my attention, so He speaks to somebody who was next to me to
Mm-hmm.
say something. It was like,
Sometimes.
yeah,
Yep.
that might be the
For
case,
sure.
though, most of the time.
Well, in
Oh,
our, in this, go ahead.
oh no, I was going to say there was another one that I remember from Anthony Campolo. I don't know if you remember him.
Mm-hmm.
I did some concerts with him once, and one of my favorite lines that he ever said was, he says, "God can still draw a straight line with a crooked stick."
Yep. That's good. That's
Moving
awesome.
on. So there you go. I'm just
Well, I was so in our last segment, something we always like to do with everybody is what we call rapid fire, which is just where we ask you questions that have nothing to do with the subject, just to find out more about you and what you like. So, first one being, what is, and I think you told me this once when we talked on the phone. What is your favorite thing to eat? Your favorite food, hands down.
oh man.
You'd eat it every day.
Well, chocolate. It was like after dinner, after lunch, after breakfast. I have to have something chocolate. It's probably my favorite thing.
Yeah.
But real food. I like country fried chicken. Or
Mm.
country fried steak. That's my favorite.
Now, you said your dad pastored an AG church when you were a kid. Where did you grow up before you ended up out in Riverside area?
No, I grew up everywhere. My dad was an evangelist when I was born. He was only 19 when I came along, but he was still Utah, Colorado, Washington State, North Carolina, all of those things.
All over. What is something you like to do that's non-music related, hobby wise? I mean, I know you're a grandfather. That probably keeps you busy.
Um, Gardening, actually, I've got plants all over the place because I can see they grow faster than people's Christian lives. It's like, hey, look at there, I can make an improvement, that I can see in a matter of weeks. So, yeah, it's probably an old guy thing now, but if you looked around my neighborhood, my backyard looks like a jungle.
Well, and one nice thing living where you do in California is that things grow really well. Citrus, all those fun things do so well in the more mild weather.
Well, it stays sunny out here a lot. That's all.
Now, do you like being in California? You like the beach? Do you like to surf? Is there anything you do
I used to
related to
do
that?
that kind of stuff. I'm too old for that now. It's like my knees don't work. Yeah, I don't surf anymore. Used to ride motorcycles, but that started to get kind of dangerous. I live in a
Mm-hmm.
55 plus community now, and people just back out of their driveway and don't even look. So I'm going. I don't want to be on a motorcycle
Sure.
when that happens. So, man, I've kind of, and rollerblading and sailboating, all of those things, scuba diving. I did all of that stuff, and
Yeah.
now give me a Wi-Fi and a comfortable chair on my back patio, and that's my hobby.
Well, and that's exactly what we're doing. We've been doing today. Well,
Yeah,
I want to thank you for taking the time away from gardening and your
and
podcast.
my little pumpkin eater over here. Okay, I, I I hope you enjoyed her company. She's here every morning, but today she was there at the crack of dawn. So
Now, so you have? Did you tell me 5 grandkids?
I have 5 grandkids. I got 4 granddaughters, and they're all within screaming distance
Yeah,
most of the time. And
yeah.
I never thought that this many people would be calling me grandpa. But I've got a grandson too, and I don't see as often. He lives down in San Diego. But
Now, you told me a story a couple of months ago that I believe it was your wife's birthday, and they left all the grandkids, the grandgirls, with you. Is that?
no, they've done that a couple of times now. I didn't. I'm surprised they trust me to keep all the grandkids at the same time, because one of them's 9 years old now, and I took I had two of them not too long ago that where I took them to McDonald's and all this stuff, and I didn't realize the most painful thing for me was, they're completely into Taylor Swift. I'm going, oh gosh, I had to listen to Taylor Swift songs for like 2 hours, and when they left and went home, I'm going, thank you, Jesus. So sometimes, the things that God puts you through makes you appreciate Him more.
Now, what do you do different that you didn't do with when you were a parent, and now that you're a grandparent? What are the things you see yourself doing differently?
Well, I let them eat popsicles whenever they want. It's like, oh, it's just before dinner. Yeah, no problem. Let's have cake. Let's have ice
Yeah.
cream. Uh, yeah, I don't accept any responsibility for their general behavior. I teach them how to make weird noises and color. They come over and I'm just trying to get them to sit down. Hey, let's color. So I'll get magic markers out and we'll draw puppies and flowers.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And those are the things they'll remember you. I remember when Grandpa used to,
Well, you know
make us
what?
sit
I
down and
also
color.
don't like buying cards. And nowadays, there's birthdays and graduations and weddings and stuff. And you got to have a card for everything. And it's like, man, those things are like $5, $6 or more. I'm going. I'm make my own cards.
There you
So
go.
so I do that. I'll make up a card and I can write for a card company. I
Well, and
write
I think
for a living.
sometimes the cards are more for the giver. I've told my wife, I'm like, okay, that teenage boy doesn't care about that card. Just give him the gift card.
No, yeah,
Just write his name on the gift card and hand it to him. Oh
no.
no, I'm like,
We put $5 in the card. He might not like the card, but he knows what's coming.
he knows what's coming. Exactly.
That works better than a gift card because I got to tell you, gift cards are like, you never get the whole amount covered when you take it to cash it in, and you either leave some on there or you have to pay
Hmm.
extra with it, and then it's like I've got gift cards uh, in my junk drawer that I haven't used yet because it's just a pain. I don't want to use them. It's like, oh, I gotta type in a bunch of numbers and do this and
Yeah, yeah.
that. It's like, gift cards are out. I don't like to do that. I'd rather send my son a plunger and put and put $5 underneath it.
Right. Well, hey, I want to thank you for joining us and talking about just kind of the eras and where are. I know you mentioned the website. What are the other ways that people can connect with you, find you, follow what you're doing,
Well,
and stay in
if you go
touch?
to Nutshell Sermons, I check that every day. Nutshellsermons.com, and sign the comments. I also give away songs to people that are participating at Nutshell Sermons, songs that you have never heard. In fact, I've got one up right now that we just did. Um, that's for free. We did this show called Song in a Day, and you can and this we had to write and record and everything in 24 hours. It was kind of a fun thing, but it gives you a chance to see what being in the studio is like and what
Hmm.
goes on there and how a record is made and how it comes out. And then I send you that song. That's at nutshellsermons.com. Other than that, if you want to talk to me in a hurry, I'm on Twitter every day. Usually at lunatic friend and the number 2. Well, it's not Twitter now; it's X.
Hmm.
But I'm on Twitter and I'm on Bryan _ Duncan on Twitter. But that's what I'm on most of the time. I'll see you first there before an email or a website.
And you will answer that from your back porch and your gardening.
Yeah, well, I don't garden all that much. I mean, it grows by itself, but I like plants. I live in the desert, so I just want green stuff. I want to be
Hmm.
able to look at green. It's one of my favorite colors, and they say it's soothing. So that's what we do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you joining us today on the podcast. For those of you that have been listening and watching, be sure to follow, share, and like. And of course, if you're on YouTube, hit that bell so that you can get updates. We release a new podcast every Tuesday. And we appreciate Bryan being with us today. Go to nutshellsermons.com and follow him on Twitter, on X. And until next time, I'm David Grove saying thanks for joining us, and we'll see you guys on another episode.